Now, India seems to have plateaued the curve in the second wave, and now focus shifts to what can be done to prevent or better manage the possible third wave, which many experts say could impact children. So what should parents do? What precautions can be taken? To answer these questions, we have with us a panel of experts. We have Dr. Asmita Mehta. She's a professor and head of Department of Respiratory Medicine at Amrita Institute of Medical Sciences. She's joining us live from Kochi. Dr. Charudat Arora, a critical care and infectious disease specialist. She's joining us live from Faridabad. And Dr. Suman Arora, Vice President, Clinical Services, Day-to-Day Health, live from Delhi. Dr. Sanjeev Bagai, who is a senior pediatrician and chairman of the Nephron Clinic, is joining us live from New Delhi. Welcome to our panel, a special discussion in this edition of The Big Story, where we're going to be talking about COVID in children. And if I would like to take my first question to Dr. Asmita Mehta. Dr. Mehta, if you can tell us, what is the intensity of COVID infection in children?
Yeah, so first of all, as a pulmonologist, I'm an adept pulmonologist, and I would like to say from my colleagues, which I come across, the pediatric population in the first wave itself was very, very rarely affected. Most of the children did not require hospitalization. However, the second wave was slightly different, and most of the people. The index case was a children. Like most of the time, the child came to the hospital with diarrhea, vomiting, sore throat, or fever, and then they found the cluster analysis and they found the whole family was positive. So in the second wave, the children are affected, but thankfully, the seriousness of illness is no more different than the first wave. So, in my opinion, the severity of illness of COVID-19 infection in children is slightly less than what we see in adults. Most of them do not require hospitalization. Very rarely, less than 0.3 to 4% of patients will require even ICU admission.
Thank you very much, Dr. Asmita Mehta, for answering that question. My next question would be to Dr. Sanjeev Bagai. Dr. Bagai, if you could tell us if children also face post-COVID complications. If yes, what is the nature of such complications?
Very interesting. Post-COVID complications are actually divided in various categories. One is what we call as a post-ICU syndrome, and then it goes on to what we say in the first 6 to 8 weeks, then up to 6 months and beyond 6 months. So overall, the post-COVID complications, what we call as long COVID, range from 8 to 13%. This study has been published by British Medical Journal about 4 days back. These most commonly present as body ache, malaise and fatigue, lingering allergic chronic cough, joint pains, headache, and very few children land up with what we call as pulmonary compromise. So long COVID is a known symptomatology more in adults, but in children, of course, we are now seeing it with increasing frequency. Recently, there's data which has come from UK in which long COVID symptoms are 2.5 times more than what we saw in the first wave of 2020. So this is a known complication, and there are various metabolic reasons why they happen. But this is something which we need to keep in mind. And critically important is after a child recovers from COVID, be it asymptomatic or be it a pre-symptomatic or mild case or indeed a severe case, at least a 4 to 6 weeks follow-up of a child is critical, because in the first 1 or 2 weeks after recovery, some percentage of children have what we call as MISC, which is multi-organ inflammatory syndrome of children. So we have to be extremely vigilant and careful even after a child has recovered on follow-up.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Bagai, for answering that question. Dr. Sumana Arora, I would like to take the next question to you, a follow-up to what Dr. Bagai said. What is the treatment protocol for children, considering there could be post-COVID complications? What should be the ideal treatment protocol for children?
The question, and right at the start, I'd like to specify I'm not a pediatrician, and this question is better addressed by a pediatrician. However, having said that, most children that we are seeing so far need just a basic paracetamol and supportive management. unless and until they are seen immunocompromised because of some other illness, say nephrotic syndrome, or they are patients of leukemia. And then the underlying disease also has to be handled appropriately, because some infections like COVID can trigger another episode of other underlying diseases like nephrosis.
Yes, Dr. Sumana, I will take that question again with a pediatrician, Dr. Sanjeev Bagai, as well. But going across to Dr. Charudat Arora, sir, if you can answer this question on a frequently asked viewer question on how can parents safeguard children from the virus? What are the measures that are supposed to be taken, the preventive measures that are supposed to be taken?
That answer has been given so many times by multiple people, and still, the answer still remains the same, that following COVID-appropriate behavior, such as always wearing masks, keeping safe social physical distancing, and also, keeping your hand hygiene. These three are the most important parameters which needs to be inculcated in our children for not only COVID, but for preventing a lot of respiratory and other preventable infections. Being an infectious disease specialist, I can obviously vouch and say that 70% of all our infections can be tackled if we keep our hand hygiene safe. And at the same time, it can also, be a boon in our future generation for tackling diseases such as tuberculosis. So these three measures have to be done very religiously, and make sure your kids are not going to places which are crowded, especially at this point of time, and parents must keep a check on it. And now I'm in my experience in the last 1.5 years, I've seen that kids are actually more compliant with our instructions rather than the adults. So that's a hats off to all the kids.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Charudat Arora, for answering that question. I would like to go back to Dr. Asmita A. Mehta for the next question that we have from our viewers. How can parents increase immunity in children?
Very good question in today's era, because you see, you are bombarded with the products which will claim to increase your immunity in day-to-day life, and everybody claims to be better than the other. And whom to rely? There are many protein powders and many things. Having said that, there are no data which says that the vitamin C or zinc supplementation increases the chances of survival or decreases the risk of infection in COVID-19. So what I would suggest is just be neutral and just give a nutritious diet to your kids rather than increasing any particular content of food. If you will have a balanced diet, including the fresh, seasonal fruits and normal vegetables, with a normal healthy diet that will be sufficient for the immunity which is required for a children, for not only for only COVID infection, but for any infection in that particular aspect.
Thank you, Dr. Mehta, for answering that question. Dr. Bagai, coming back to you, I would like to I would repeat the question once again on the COVID protocol, the treatment protocol for children, as well as if you can also tell us how should parents prepare for the third wave that could possibly affect children the most?
Okay, so before we answer the question, it's important to inform the viewers and especially young parents and mothers of what should not be done. That's more important, because very often a host of telephonic and WhatsApp and home advice is given, which can often be detrimental. So the only thing which you actually give at home is a fever control medicine, which is paracetamol. You can give it every 4 to 6 hours. What is important is not to give. What is not to start inadvertently, and abuse and misuse is of combination painkillers and fever medicines. Do not start medicines which contain drugs like ibuprofen or aspirin or nimesulide, because they can be extremely harmful to a child. Do not start on any antibiotics, because that actually covers the clinical picture and it makes it more difficult for a clinician to zero down on a diagnosis. And especially avoid drugs which are what we call as a quinolone group of drugs in children, because indeed every fever is not COVID. You can actually have a prolonged fever which actually may be even a silent tuberculosis which is preventing, and it may mask the presentation. And do not begin any home remedies of various kind of juices of various herbs and remedies, because it can cause harm. By and large, most children are very well managed with paracetamol, good hydration, and normal diet at home. In case a child is hospitalized for obvious reasons, the treatment, of course, will be fine-tuned. But specific treatments which are with regards to the multi-organ inflammatory disease or Kawasaki-like disease would include then, of course, steroids and immunoglobulins and other lines of medications. Most of the adult antivirals have to be used very carefully in children because the dose has to be titrated, and some of them haven't been approved for the pediatric use as yet. But we need to be very simple in our approach because a vast number of times we can manage very well. And in the end, what I would like to mention is that the best symptomatology for a young child and the best way a description is given is from the mother. I always say the mother knows best. She will know firsthand if a child is well or not well. Therefore, history taking and understanding the family dynamics between a mother and a child is extremely important. So those extra 5 minutes which are spent with the mother trying to understand the clinical feel of a child, just the look of a child, how a child is feeding, how a child is behaving, the sleep patterns, the urine output, the total volume of milk or the diet which the child has taken is a wealth of information which we can get.
Dr. Bagai, that has been very informative. Thank you very much for answering that question. And before we move to the next question with Dr. Sumana Arora, I would just like to inform our viewers of the breaking news update that we are getting in connection with the topic that we are discussing right now. National Commission for Protection of Child Rights has written to the Health Ministry to share guidelines and protocols with the NCPCR at the earliest because the NCPCR has also mentioned that the third wave, if it is likely to impact the children, it is necessary to have guidelines. This is a breaking news update that we're getting. We will give more details to on this to our viewers. But Dr. Sumana Arora, if you could also share with us your medical opinion on whether parents should be prioritized and should they get vaccinated before a possible third wave?
So this entire piece on vaccination is the only, if I could say, weapon in our hands to tackle this pandemic. And right now, it's heartening to know that your breaking news update that they are looking at guidelines that could avoid a lot of confusion. Coming back to vaccinations, yes, everybody who's eligible to be vaccinated should be vaccinated at the earliest. And the second thing I would like to talk about vaccination is that the Covaxin trials for children from the age group of 2 to 18 have also begun, phase 2 and phase 3 trials. And hopefully we'll see vaccinations for children as well sometime in the near future. And I hope vaccinations will be available for our citizens to get vaccinated at the earliest. And of course, that does not mean that we stop COVID-appropriate behavior. Very, very important to keep continuing masking, hand washing and social distancing.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Sumana Arora, for answering that question. Dr. Charudat Arora, if you could also like to take forward this answer on would vaccinating kids mitigate the third wave impact, your medical opinion on it?
I think, as Dr. Arora just said, I'm going to echo my same thoughts on the same line, saying that, vaccination is definitely one of the most pivotal tools that we have in preventing the infection. However, having said that, with a country like India with a diverse population and a huge number, vaccination should not be the one which we are depending upon. We have seen that since January, the healthcare workers phase 1 began, and slowly and steadily we are trying to, vaccinate all our adults. And as per the latest reports, it's going to take another year to completely vaccinate all our adult population. At the same time, when we are anticipating a third wave, which is coming in and impending for kids at risk, I think more importantly, it is the COVID-appropriate behavior which is going to take a front step. And vaccination, as the second and the third trials for Covaxin for kids have started, I think in the next coming 2 to 3 months are going to be very critical on what are the efficacy and what are the safety guidelines of the vaccination for kids and children. But at the same time, it looks a little difficult for kids less than 12 to get vaccinated by this year because the vaccination trials and the safety and the efficacy for children have much stricter, stringent, and more, guidelines are more narrower, not flexible enough because we cannot play with the safety of the kids. So I think COVID-appropriate behavior is going to take a front step, and vaccination trials should be the step what scientists are doing at their best.
Thank you, Dr. Charudat Arora, for answering that question. Dr. Asmita Mehta, if you can answer the next question. And it's very concerning because with limited outdoor activity, how do you address concerns of overall development of a child? Because we know children are prohibited from going outside. Classrooms have been are now mostly virtual. So there are certain concerns on overall development of a child. What do you think are the measures that can be taken?
That all the children who are suffering because of COVID, the whole entire year they passed studying at home. When we were very much concerned about the exposure to net and the TV and the mobile and computer timings were limited, but we are ourselves giving that in our children's hand because there is no other option. So having said that, they are so lonely at home, studying alone. There is no interaction between the teacher and the child at home, no friends, no social activity. So I would say the worst affected population by COVID in any country will be children when the lockdown happens. If you have got more than one child at home, you are lucky because at least they have got some company. The single child policy and most of the parents who are working, they usually select to have only one child, and then their child is so lonely because of COVID. To be honest, I don't know what to do for that. If you are living in a flat or a society where there are multiple houses and you allow with the mask some kind of mingling, it's fine. Otherwise, there is no other solution. I'm sorry, I don't have any answer for how to prevent that social isolation. I have read or I have come across many reports in which there are many psychiatric issues which is happening in adolescent children, particularly because of the depression, because they can't share the things which they can share with their friends, with their parents, and many social issues are coming across. And there is no solution or there is no one solution which I can say for that, but having said that, if there are cousins and if there are some family members and if they can arrange some Zoom meeting or something which will not definitely replace the activity which was happening in the pre-COVID era, but it will definitely help you. The second thing is indoor activities like cycling, badminton, or some kind of play. Most of the children are doing board games right now. That's also not bad. At least they are enjoying something rather than just having monotonous activity. But I don't think there is any solution for children as such, because as an adult, we have still gone out of house. Restrictions are more for children and they are the worst affected, in my opinion.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Asmita Mehta, for answering that question. Dr. Sanjeev Bagai, I would like to take the final question with you in this special broadcast. If you could also elaborate on the overall development of children, and also in connection to the breaking news that we have right now, if what should be the ideal guidelines in your opinion as a medical expert?
So I think overall, if you see not only in India but all over the globe, a neurological or a mental health of individuals is not very often given top priority, and more so in a country like India where it's very often considered as a taboo or a stigma. Now, most recent data, again I'm talking of publications, have shown 83% of adolescents, including children, who come out from acute COVID have some amount of neuropsychiatric symptoms. It can range from anxiety, depression, anger, fear, lack of sleep or abnormal sleep pattern, and so on. So I think the neurological aspects and the mental state of an entire society is extremely important to address. So on this ground, it is important that all the medical associations should have a helpline. Most of the hospitals should have a counseling center, not only for adults but for children. It's important that we've come a long way as far as pediatric and pediatric subspecialties is concerned, and pediatrics are not miniature adults. So I think the etiology and pathogenesis and the causes are entirely different. So we need to talk of that in that respect. And taking forward from my last statement is, In India, we have a COVID task force, but what is extremely important is to have a pediatric COVID task force. I think if we're talking of a 38 to 40% pediatric population, that's more than 1/3 of Indian population being pediatrics. I think we need a pediatric task force, which should include, of course, pediatric administrators, pediatric intensivists and subspecialists, general pediatricians, and so on. So the guidelines, of course, broadly are there, but I think we'll have to fine-tune it, keeping in mind that the mutant strains are more and more commonly seen in the pediatric age group. The recent data of B1617 type 2 is almost 3 to 4 folds more than a couple of weeks back. And that is presenting very differently as far as the clinical picture is concerned. The immunophenotyping is different. So we need to focus on pediatrics slightly differently, and I think the need of the hour is a pediatric task force at a national level.
Yes. Thank you very much, Dr. Sanjeev Bagai, for answering that question. And I would like to thank the entire panel for joining us on this special coverage and giving us more information on what could be done if there's COVID in children. Thank you very much, doctors, for joining us on this special broadcast.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.